Welcome to another edition of Politics and Random. Berto Willis, your host. Today we have, once again, our special guest, Marlon Weems, who is AKA the Journeyman, a man who spent 30 years in finance, 10 of those on Wall Street. Global investment banks subsequently hired him to help them decipher development in the financial and socio-economic landscape. Marlon points out that mainstream news rarely drills down enough to give a true picture of what's happening, let alone what it all means, and henceforth the need for writers like the Journeyman. Marlon Weems, welcome to Politics Right once again.
Good to be with you.
Hey, look, we have to get rolling on this conversation right away. There are two big issues that are hitting us up right now. One is, of course, that I want to tackle first and then get it out of the way. And then it's the economy, Biden, where do we go from here? A possibility of a negative GDP in this next coming up, which I don't think means recession, but we'll talk about it. Anyhow, what are your thoughts so far on the hearing?
Oh, the hearing. Oh, wow. You know, it's just every time. And this last one, for me anyway, it did not tell, it didn't like make my mind change in any way, except to just recognize how we dodged a bullet. I mean, it's frightening, honestly, to see just the level of corruption. Just and what really gets me the most, and what I holler at my TV about, is I'm just not seeing folks going to jail quick enough.
Yeah.
I mean, if either of us did an nth of what we're learning, this would already be over.
There, you know that. Let me tell you what got me with this last hearing, even though implicitly I think we all knew it, right? We had Donald Trump, let's say, I think they said 100 and something minutes not doing anything.
187 minutes.
187 minutes. But the bigger question is, how does something like what occurred with that insurrection, with that attempted coup occur, and nobody can reach any leadership in law enforcement to execute? And why is it that even with this commission right now, that isn't a central issue, that we had a president who actually held on, prevented? There's a memo that Tom Hartman sent out yesterday.
Yes.
And it showed a list of what Clark sent, all the things the National Guards couldn't do. They couldn't carry weapons. They couldn't engage anybody. They couldn't get there until they're called. A whole list of, there's a document that prohibited these, the law enforcement.
I think what we, when we saw it happening, I don't think it was clear at the time just how systematic this was. But if you remember, and I remember at the time going, okay, whoa, what's this guy up to? I mean, because you started to see him replacing people in these key positions with folks that you knew didn't know what the heck they were doing. You know, Kash Patel, the guy he put in charge of the Defense Department, and he's moving these chess pieces around, but connecting it to the actual physical violence wasn't quite as obvious as this committee has made it over, what have they done, 8 different hearings, I think. So yeah, they're definitely, I mean, and the entire presidency, I think, underscores what can happen when you rely on tradition and norms.
Exactly.
And even laws. I think it was Adam Kinzinger, I think is that his name?
Kinzinger, yes.
Kinzinger. So I think he made a good point during the hearing when he said, laws are just something written on paper, but if you got somebody that doesn't care, then you're in trouble. And, for me, and I'll just wrap it up, this thought, what really bothers me, I think, more than any of this stuff, is how, and I'm going to say the media, But not only them, even politicians, both sides, the Democrats as well, this whole idea that he can even run. How in the world do you have a guy that everybody knows tried to overthrow the government, and he's talking about trying to be president again? This guy shouldn't be able to be dog catcher. I mean, honestly.
Let me tell you something, Marlon. You know, whenever some people speak about others having privilege, people sort of get upset. They say, oh, that's not true. What kind of privilege do I have? Or look at folks in Appalachia and look at, oh, there's no privilege. But, you know, if I looked at you and I said the president of the United States had several kids out of wedlock, had several baby mamas, raped several women, also is on tape saying, you know, when you're like me, you can grab them by the pee. When you have a president that goes out and cusses, use vulgar language, is misogynistic language, uses epithets and you name it, that's what this president has, or that past president did. Imagine if President Obama had baby mamas running around.
You could stop right there.
Yeah, I mean,
you can stop right there.
Right. Imagine if, look, Donald Trump is the exact caricature of what many like to caricature as that not worthy person of color, that not worthy Black man. And it's amazing how it's mirrored all on guys like, and it's not only Donald Trump. We can go through list and lists from the founding fathers and otherwise. You know, they make it seem like, oh, these are the guys that don't have control. These are the guys that can't do X, Y, and Z. But from the founding fathers, this crap has been happening. It's just now it's televised. Your thoughts?
Well, let's just add to the list something that does not get talked about very much at all. And I knew something was up when in 2015, when Trump ran and this did not get brought up. You may or may not know the Trump casino. I want to say it was in 2015, perhaps, received the largest fine that a casino had ever received. And this was from what's called FinCEN. And it's basically an entity that is related to finance and financial crimes. And what they do is, and I had to deal with them. I mean, every broker in the country has to deal with them because it governs money laundering.
Right.
And the Trump casino got a $10 million fine for repeated violations of
money laundering,
you know, money laundering, bank secrecy, you know, this kind of stuff. And I have thought about that a lot, especially given all that we know about how this guy operates, especially with his finances. So when you see something like that just sort of get, you know, shrugged off, nobody really brings it up, you just realize the difference. You know, if I ran for something, folks would be looking to see how many times I overdrawn my bank account.
Right, right.
You know,
I also think, Marlon, is there's another dynamics here, and you know, there are two dynamics really, right? There's one that we can play on things like the issues that of Trump having privilege and so forth, but there's the other issue where having a buffoon with financing behind him is actually good for a whole lot of other capitalists out there. The way they saw it is they were going to go to the cleaners, and guess what, Marlon? They went to the cleaners.
They certainly did. They took us to the cleaners.
They took us to the. Actually, that's what I should have said. They took us to the cleaners.
I mean, because you just look at it there in terms of real policy. He didn't do that much.
No.
He kind of, there were some things that he kind of, let continue to go as they were. But Supreme Court justices, tax cut, not for us, but
right.
That is why when I hear guys like Lindsey Graham talking about how now we got to be, if we can just get back in, we got to look at these entitlements, we got to get this budget deficit straight. They added like $2 trillion
Oh, yeah.
to the budget deficit just with that tax cut. And it
Yes.
was supposed to do all these things. It was supposed to unleash the job creators. And, you've heard all the talking points.
Now, that's why I always think this is all a cahoots. If you listen to my show a lot, right? I don't only hold Republicans or MAGAs accountable. I also hold Democrats accountable. And the reason why I also hold Democrats accountable are multifaceted, right? Numero uno. I mean, right now, the Republicans have a document, a paper stating that they want to reevaluate every 5 years all our, I hate the word entitlement.
Right. That's his proposal that he wasn't
right.
supposed to release it, but he did. But
and the funny thing about it is, I think it is political malpractice that every single Democrat does not have talking points right now. That every time they're in front of a camera, every time they write an article, every time they write a blog that says, do remember your Social Security is subject to expiration in 5 years. And of course, you put it in better words and simpler words than I'm probably capable of saying. But I think it is political malpractice. And that's where I say too often, and I don't know if you believe this, I always differentiate us into 4 parties, right? MAGA, Republicans, neoliberal Democrats, and progressives. And what I
think
find,
that's fair.
Yes. And what I find is that there is so much commonality between neoliberals and Republicans that the neoliberals are always trying to keep the progressives in check. In other words, yeah, we have Build Back Better that was split into 2 pieces.
Oh yeah.
It was immediately evident.
You knew what was going to happen. And it just, well, I think there's another factor there. And, you call them neoliberals or moderates or whatever you want to call them. I think that there's a certain faction of the Democratic Party. And I think as a person of my age, I can say this, these people are too old. And I don't mean old in age, but, right up here, even Biden, I hate to say it. Now, don't get me wrong. I want to just say up front, if it's Biden and whoever the Republicans
it is going to be
put
Biden,
up,
yeah.
I'm voting for Biden. But is he the best thing that we could have? I don't think he is. I
don't even think he's going to run in the next. I don't think he can make it for another 4 years.
I hope he does not run. But like I said, if he does, I'm voting for him.
Yeah. I mean,
I have some ideas of who could win, I think.
What's your thoughts on that? I'm curious.
Gavin Newsom, Kamala Harris. I mean, I would assume she would be in the top spot.
Right.
Because I don't see how you can be vice president and then have another guy come in
and be the vice president.
And you're going to be under him.
Right.
That would piss off every Black woman in America. Heck, it ought to piss off every woman in America. If I can use that language. But
the interesting thing, no, that's cool. The interesting thing about it is Kamala Harris has to somehow find a way to get more visibility and also improve her negatives. Because
I have some thought on that too.
What are your thoughts on that?
I've already started kind of drafting a piece on this. I'm just busy with some other stuff, but I believe that she should be the person front and center on, abortion, choice, that, all of these different things that they're throwing at us.
Right.
Loving, interracial marriage. She can speak to that. I think Biden says the right words, but, and no knock on him, I don't think he believes it as strongly or at least he doesn't articulate it as strongly as he should. So I think, talk about malpractice, I think she should be out there every day talking about these issues and setting herself up, because that if Democrats can't pull, what is it? White women tend to vote Republican, but on this issue, it's not just Democrats that need reproductive health care.
And Marlon, that is why I think when I talk about democratic malpractice on purpose, etc., I think so much about what's occurring today. There is absolutely no way Republicans, who I call, there's no way the Talibanization of the Republican Party can effectively win in 2022. And all these prognostication about it's going to be a landslide for Republicans and they're going to take the House and the Senate, that only happens with democratic malpractice. In other words, there is nothing appealing that Republicans are offering right now. When I say nothing appealing, it's deeper than nothing appealing, right? It is that it is a detriment to your health. It's a detriment to so much. And the problem is most Americans are not listening to the news like you and I are. Most of them are going to church, they're going to the parties, they're going to the bars. They don't want to be bothered with this kind of stuff until it's right up on them. So if somebody calls them, are you happy with what's going on? No, prices are high. But nobody's telling them, well, here, I have a whole piece on supply chain. I have a whole piece on inflation. All of this is fraud. I have a whole piece on all of this. And it's funny because I was on a Muslim TV, and the guy was shocked of the things that I was saying. And he was like, wait a minute, are you saying there should be an oil glut? Are you saying that the oil prices should? I'm like, look, I'm saying it out loud. The oil guys already know it. They know it. And they're the thing about the stock market and all of that is your word can influence pricing, but eventually the glut comes to pass. And, I was explaining this to the guy off record, and I said, let me tell you something. Everybody talking about, okay, Russia's oil off the market. I said, If we want to be honest, the price of oil should be falling, not driving up. Russia's oil is still on the market, and it's being sold at a discount to China and India. That means that the oil that China and India would have been otherwise buying off the other markets are still there. That glut's going to show up. And you know how we solved it? And you know what else the oil companies did, Marlon? They started shutting down refineries. Oh, that's new excuse. And the oil that Biden is letting out of the reserve, we can't refine it because it's shut. So we're shipping it overseas. And that's then correct. As soon as we ship it overseas, Fox News says, why is our prices so high and Biden is shipping oil overseas? Marlon, it's a game, Marlon. Yes, and we are losing it because we don't have enough people saying it.
It's hard to argue with that. It's hard to argue with it. And I mean, if you want to talk about inflation for a bit, I guess it was right around the time that Biden was put in office, I wrote something, Larry Summers, the economist. And see, this is what I'm talking about. This is who Biden's listening to.
Right.
And he hadn't, I don't think he had taken, he had actually been inaugurated yet when I wrote this. But, of course, Larry Summers was warning that we're going to have all this inflation if you give these people another check. Okay. And now that inflation has happened, I'm seeing these articles, oh boy, Larry Summers was right. And I'm kind of like, well, hang on a second. Okay. Maybe he was kind of right. And I'm not going to say that, that second or the last.
I don't want to interrupt you. I'm not going to interrupt you till afterwards, but he's not right, but go ahead. Well, and I'll prove it to you later, but go ahead.
Oh, I'm going to say, we may be on the same page here. First of all, a lot of this is price gouging. Mm-hmm. Now, you have to think if you think back, and I was talking about this at the time, we're talking about, I don't know, a year and a half ago, you had guys like Chipotle talking about, oh, we got to raise prices because now we're paying people $15 an hour, right? And the price increases were not commensurate with the amount of increase in wages. But, you know, so just put that over there to the side. And in the meantime, they also were paying their CEO something like $30 million bonuses, and, you know, this kind of thing. So as perverse as that is, that's part of it. And of course, you know, I'm sure you talk about this on your show. I know you do. All the oil companies are making stupid amounts of profits. Okay, it's not like they're just getting by and they're just having to raise their prices. Okay, but the thing that not many people talk about is this: when you look at stimulus, you know, all total, you know, all the money that you know, CARES Act, all of that stuff, I think it totals to something in the neighborhood of $5 trillion. But what doesn't get talked about is while that was happening, the Federal Reserve was over here just printing money because they had to save Wall Street and the stock market. Now, that total just under, so basically the total amount of just money the government put in the system, $10 trillion, $5 trillion went to help, you know, help people not be out on the streets. The other 4.8 trillion, something to that, you know, in that area, that was the Fed. So in my mind, I think look, we had to give people money to stay at home. We had to. We had to give people money to be able to pay their rent, even though some states like my home state, Arkansas, wouldn't take the money, which is a whole different conversation. But did we really have to put $5 trillion into Wall Street? I don't know. I don't think so. So all that to say, I think that there's a strong argument that the Fed is the cause of this. And they didn't move fast enough to slow it down, because, you know, the economy grew, I think, year over year, I think it's close to 10%.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Now, the Fed target, just to wrap up, the Fed target for what's acceptable inflation is like 2%. So they had to see this happening. So what were they thinking? So anyway, that's my thought.
There is so much to deconstruct with what you've said, and what you've said is absolutely truth. But first, I want to remind everybody what inflation is, right? Inflation is simply the increase in prices, and increase in prices can occur for several reasons. There's a shortage, so people are willing to pay a lot more for something that more people have to fight over, or simply price gouging. My contention is, if you are going to the store right now, you know, don't think your eyes are lying to you. There was never a line that you had to form for gasoline. There was never a line that you had to form for milk. There were a few shortages of eggs because of the avian flu, so I can understand some, you know, a little bit of fighting for eggs. And the problems with microchips, which is true, it's because, again, of the charlatanes that we have running our corporations right now, who decided that they wanted to manufacture all, if not the vast majority of their chips overseas, at the same time that they had something called just-in-time inventory, which means they didn't keep a ready supply of these chips at home because they didn't want to keep inventory. So
because they don't want to show that on the balance sheet.
Exactly. So it's important for people to understand this. All of today's inflationary pressures are caused by corporations who are still giving their executives big bonuses for charging prices, higher prices on less products, and making bigger profits. And it's deeper, because I want folks to understand this, right? You know, whenever you talk about supply and demand, it's real. It's happened to be the capitalist system that we run in. You know, when I came to this country, I didn't believe in supply and demand. I still don't, but since I live in, I mean, I understand it. I understand why it works. But what I'm saying is we We shouldn't have a supply and demand problem in certain parts of the economy. We shouldn't have. In other words, that means the following, right? Here's the deal. Summers, he was extraordinarily pissed off that we were going to give the little man some money in his pocket because it could be inflationary. Why would it be inflationary? Because the corporatists, the capitalists know that you have more money in your pocket, and because you have more money in your pocket, you will be willing to pay more for services and products. It's not magic, it's supply and demand. There's more supply of money, and I'm going to raise my prices as high as I can until you don't have the money to spend it. Because remember, and tell me if I'm wrong here, Marlon, have you had any problems finding any major products that you need to survive?
Oh, not now. I mean, 2 years ago, maybe, when, so for example, I tried to buy a bicycle. It took me months because all of the guts of a bike now are made overseas.
In China.
So I had to, I mean, they assemble it here. But, like the chain and the derailleur and all of that stuff, it comes from China, and then they just put it on the frame of the bike when it gets here.
But the majority of things that we
in
needed.
The last year, no. Now,
let me tell you.
I'll just say, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead. No, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, I've been around long enough to remember what a for real gas shortage looks like.
Exactly.
Back in the 70s when people were around the block.
Right.
And what's funny? Gas was like 99 cents, and people were like, if it goes over $1, I am not buying. And of course you have to buy it.
Marlon, it is so, but what you're right. But what I keep driving at is this inflation, as you also said, is price gouging. Look, and not only that it's price gouging, the reason for it is bad corporate management. And then we are asked to pay the price for their misdeeds. But here's the other part that gets me, right? Anybody who is saying we shouldn't give money to the least because it could be inflationary is saying one important thing, that only those who have money have the right to spend what they have on what they want. Because it is actually saying that, well, look, we are not going to tax those people who are making all these big profits now. They can afford just about anything, but we're not going to give those kids some milk, those kids some bread, because if we give them more money to spend into the economy, it's going to be inflationary, as opposed to saying, okay, if you want to work under that capitalist model, well, then let's take the money. If you don't want it to be inflationary, take the money from the rich in taxes and then immediately shovel it
they don't want to do that
to the
either.
other side. But what I'm saying is, if you're so concerned about controlling inflation and you don't want to increase the money supply by giving to the poor, then take it from those who have gotten it on the backs of the poor, right?
Well, that's a nice theory.
I know.
But the thing is, and I think when you look at it that way, you expose how disingenuous some of these arguments are. And so, for example, I was reading, again, about my home state, Arkansas. You remember when Democrats passed, rental assistance money that got sent to all the states. And I mentioned earlier, they didn't take the money. And, this is the same kind of thing we saw with the Affordable Care Act.
Texas don't take the Medicaid expansion.
We're not going to take this money. I think my current state, North Carolina, still has not, because we got a Republican legislature.
Right.
So, there's that. But in Arkansas, you got a state with a surplus. And, and people are hurting. I mean, they still haven't fully recovered from COVID. And the other day, I think, it was Asa Hutchinson, who's the governor there, said, well, we didn't take the money because our economy is doing good. Anybody that wants a job can get one. Well, not if you got COVID, and some people can't go to work. I would not go to the office. I got, I'm too old. My blood pressure's too high. I don't need the risk of of getting around some person who refused to get vaccinated.
There you go.
I can't. I'm just not going to do that. Fortunately for me, I work from home, but in a state like Arkansas, there's probably not a lot of poor people working from home.
And
and
again,
they
those are
don't
the
want to do
expendables.
anything to help these people. Yeah, well, yeah.
There, and you know what is sad about that? In places like South Carolina and West Virginia and Mississippi, the poorest states, their leadership, their Republican leadership is a clear and present danger to their health, a clear and present danger to their finances, a clear and present danger to their existence. And somehow, and I'm going to put that on many times on us. I'm sure you're enjoying our talk with Marlon Weems, the former Wall Street trader and writer and author of the Journeyman newsletter at Substack. Let's do this and we'll be right back. Politics Done Right depends on you to keep doing what we do. What do? We make sure to keep, number one, the internet seeded with blogs and information to counter the right and to present what progressives represent for the benefit of us all to everybody so that it's not misread, misled by any other entity. We make sure and populate that internet with blogs, with videos, with all these other things to make sure that we are informed and to counter everything that you normally hear that are lying at the right. We also make sure to create articles in magazines, articles in newspapers all around the country to ensure, again, that our message gets out there. Last but not least, we also write books. As you see it, Class Warfare, the Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom, How to Make America Utopia, are two of the many books that I've written on these issues. So please support us in one of many ways. Numero uno, you can support us at PayPal, either one time or monthly. Go to politicsdoneright.com/PayPal. You can support us on Patreon. That is politicsdoneright.com/Patreon. Patreon is spelled Patreon. You can support us by becoming a part of our YouTube channel, going to politicsdoneright.com/YouTube, or you can support us in many other forms that you can find at politicsdoneright.com/support. Be sure to visit our store, politicsdoneright.com/store, and get our books at politicsdoneright.com/books. And don't forget, folks, please consider supporting us at politicsdoneright.com/netroots for our upcoming trip to Pittsburgh, where we are going out there and we will be discussing progressive policies and putting them into action. Again, that is politicsdoneright.com/netroots. Check it out. We're back with El Señor Marlon Weems. Because, I was just listening to a TikTok by a good friend of mine, Cody Polk. He ran for state house here. Mm-hmm. He's now a professor at a university. And he said, you know what? We don't need all of the rural voters. Right now, we're getting probably 20-25% of them. We just need a little bit more. And he said, but we got to go in there and we have to go in there with some sort of humility, not that we are the know-all. We have to go in with some sort of humility and talk to these guys and invite these guys in, because the caricature that the right has made of people like us, those people that you can understand how they feel, what they feel. And, everybody wants to, we talk a lot about race.
Every Democrat does not live in Manhattan. I mean,
thank you.
I'm in, now, granted, I'm on an island, like a walk from the beach, but right. It's considered rural North Carolina.
Right.
And around me are, a whole bunch of Let's Go Brandon flags and a whole bunch of, Trump flags and all of that. But if you have a conversation with somebody, now you're going to change everybody's mind, probably not, but you give them something to think about.
You plant the seed.
That's all it is. Give them something to think about.
Yes.
And you don't have to, I'm not going to, and I, from time to time, I'm out having a beer or something. And, I will have guys, my neighbor, the guy with the Let's Go Brandon flag. I was at a block party the other day, and he starts probing me. He's an older guy. What do you think about, this trans thing? What do you think about? Because
Right.
he knows who I am. I mean, what kind of, my
Hmm.
point of view. In other words, I don't beat him over the head with it. I
You
let him
don't
come to
have
me.
to.
No, you don't. And I just, I answered him. I didn't take the bait that he was
Right.
trying to, um, and it went fine. Is all I'm saying.
That's all you
And
got to, I wrote this book called It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors. Okay.
yes,
And the reason I wrote that book is exactly for what you're talking about. You don't have to, I go to, look, I've been to Tea Party events where I was the only Black guy that's a real left-wing progressive. Okay.
mm-hmm.
And when I left there, these people loved me. They wanted me to come back. Hey, are you going to be back and have some drinks with us? And they don't agree with me.
Right.
But you plant that
But even,
seed.
you know what? I don't even think you have to even mention politics when they get to know what kind of person you are. It's
Right.
really difficult to hate somebody, when you've gotten to know them and you see that
Yes.
they're not a monster, but they don't agree with you on anything. And I'll just throw this in. I think, and man, I never thought I would say this, but I think what Liz Cheney has done is going to go a long way. Just when we look back on this, if we can make it through, all this stuff going on, I would never vote for Liz Cheney. But just to see at least one politician who would say, you know what, screw my job. Screw if I get reelected again. This is wrong. I'm going to speak out. And she's done a good job. And I think the smartest thing that committee has done is they've let her just kind of let her take the lead, like this last one, especially because Benny Thompson was out. How can Republicans look at her and
You
this
know what is so
woman
funny?
voted with Trump 90% of the time.
Benny Thompson didn't even have to cede the position to her in the way we run meetings today. He could have done everything from where he was with COVID, but he wanted to cede that spot to her for this last thing.
I mean, we talk about Democrats not getting it right, but the way
that
he
committee
has run
got
that
it right.
committee,
But
I'm so impressed.
I am going to say something.
I didn't think it was going to be like this.
I didn't either. I'm going to tell you something, right? I am so impressed with Liz Cheney. And let me tell you how impressed I am with Liz Cheney. If we were to run in for president, if we were going to bring a Democrat that is going to say I'm going to do something but we know is a farce, that is nothing but a neoliberal. People always ask, I'm going to preface it with this. People always ask me why I love living in the South and why I love living in Texas and I'm in a red area and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things I always tell them is I always know where I stand. I can go to the Northeast and I can have people simulate that they like me. I can have people simulate that they're so much more progressive than those darn rednecks in Texas or South Carolina or wherever. But I'm going to tell you something. Living here for several decades, and I've been to I go to conferences all over. And like I have written at Daily Coast, the most progressive conference in there. Some of the most prejudiced and people that take advantage of those of us that look this way are those who call themselves progressives. And it is amazing that, like I said, a lot of times these conservatives, they want to make a point that they are not who we know many times they are. They're trying to make a point. But I tell you something, you better make your point. If you're a progressive, you better live up to your values. I say that for one specific reason. I am tired. And when I say tired, I mean tired. When I look at what we've brought all these Democrats and progressives to do in 2018, 2020, and told them, yes, we just need you to vote and get this stuff done. And to see that we have not pressured a mansion or a cinema into doing what's right. Because let me tell you something, Marlon. You can talk about, oh, well, mansion is going to jump ship, so you have to be careful of how you deal with him, or cinema is going to jump ship or whatever. At this point, I say, so what? Right now,
well, let me tell you something. I mean,
yeah.
Going into the midterms, I'm trying to think of who made the argument that I think I heard Tom Hartman talking about this, but I'm not sure he's the person who said, basically, call his bluff.
Yes.
Call his bluff right now, because we're going into the midterms. And if you talk about something motivating people, let him go ahead and be a Republican.
Exactly.
Because he's really won now. And so in effect, we'd have to win that majority back.
Right. And you know, we're poised to do it. Georgia, we're going to win Georgia, we're going to win Ohio, and we're going to win Pennsylvania. You know, it would be malpractice.
I think there's a chance that we win Wisconsin.
And yeah, Barnes,
because
Barnes.
You got JD Vance up there talking crazy.
No, JD Vance is Ohio.
Wait, I'm sorry, that's Ohio.
It's Johnson. Johnson is
Ron Johnson.
Johnson
and Ohio.
Yeah, so we can win Ohio, Wisconsin, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. I love Fetterman, you know. So
Fetterman, it kills me. Mm-hmm. But you know, to your earlier point about the North-South thing, and I've lived in both places.
Right.
For, you know, I spent 13 years in the New York, you know, Manhattan, and, you know, surrounding, sometime in New Jersey. And it's interesting that you would mention that, because I'm actually, my next piece, and it's something I'm trying to make sure I got it right, because I'm going to talk about racism that I experienced in the first half of my career
in the Northeast.
Which was in the South.
Oh, okay.
And then the last half of my career was spent in the North. So it's going to be two parts. Mm-hmm. The first part is the South, and the sort of the theme of the two is the racism is in both places. The delivery is what's different.
I mean, that is. I've written some of that at the Daily Kos. I've written some of that in one of my books. And interesting enough, Marlon, I'm glad you said that, right? I always remind people that the most severe bus riots for integrating schools occurred in Massachusetts.
In Boston.
Boston, Massachusetts.
People wouldn't believe it, but man, I remember well.
Yes.
How we were shocked in the South. I was like, what? You know,
yes.
I didn't know it was like that up there. But some of the most segregated places, man. I've got relatives in Chicago.
Right.
And I'm sure it's probably a little different now, but, you know, I think maybe they lived in the South Side. I'm not really sure where, but they had never been out of their neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, it was like they lived in a completely different ecosystem than, you know, we flew up there. This is when I was a kid. We flew up there. We were staying at, I don't know, the Drake Hotel or some really nice place. And, you know, we went to see my cousins. They didn't even know what I was talking about. They didn't know where my hotel was. They'd never really been downtown, never been to a baseball game, just totally enclosed.
Right.
And it's still like that in a lot of these major cities.
And, you know, that's why when I hear a lot of the clowning from people from up north or whatever, or a lot of times the people up north give me trouble because of the way I always try to bring folks together, etc. And it's like, oh, no, those people are. And I'm like, wait a minute. I remember going to Netroots. And when I'm trying to do an interview, when Bernie Sanders came in and Black Lives Matter came, and one of the guys, actually, I'm asking for interviews, right? These white guys are standing up, and the white girl comes and she says, I'll do the interview. I'll do the interview. I'm like, thank you, ma'am. Let's go ahead and talk. And these three other white guys, yeah, go be the white token. This is at a progressive conference.
Wow.
You know, and I looked at him and I said, isn't this a progressive conference? He didn't turn red, like didn't really know what to say. But you know, I go to these conferences and I stand out like a damn raisin.
Let me tell you something, Egberto. I ran a trading desk
Oh,
for
yes.
a lot of years. And at the time, I think there were maybe 4 African Americans that were even, in some form of running a trading desk. There were at different firms. And that was counting just not only the brokers, but even the buy side, the money managers and so forth. In fact, that's where the other 3 or 4 guys were. We interacted with large firms that said they wanted to do business with minority firms, right? And I got to a certain point that I just said, screw that stuff, because I can't live on what they wanted. What they wanted to do was put you in a little pool and say, here's an X amount of money. That's the most you can make. And we got divided up between 20 firms. And I'm kind of going, like you did with Netroots, I'm going, ain't this supposed to be capitalism?
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean I can only make 50 grand a year? I mean, like, as a firm, that's all you're going to pay me. So regardless of performance. And I actually had a guy, I won't say what firm it was, but when the financial crisis hit, he got laid off, and suddenly the only job he could get was on the other side of the fence. So he was coming to me as a vendor, wanting my business, but he was hoping that I would forget how he was a roadblock to me getting business at the asset management firm he worked for. And this guy actually said this to me. He was, this, I won't get too technical, but a trading product that he wanted me to use. And in effect, I was routing all my trading business through his firm.
Right.
Well, his product was not as good as what I had on my desk. But I asked him, why would I do that? I have a trading desk. And this guy actually said to me, well, you're a minority firm. Y'all can't trade. Yeah. And the guy, my colleague that was in the meeting with me, kicked me under the table because he thought I was, and he was probably pretty close to right. He saw something on my face that let him know, uh-oh, Marlon is getting ready to lose it here. But yeah, this guy actually said that to me. And,
well, I don't even understand what that means.
Well, no, the trope, it's kind of like black folks can't swim,
Okay, so in other words, nobody's going to want to do business with you anyway.
The biggest argument that I faced, and they shift, it was at first when minority-owned firms began to rise.
Right.
Firms like Blaylock, Williams and Company, the like. What you would hear would be, well, we want to do business, but y'all don't really have enough capital. Your balance sheet is too light, and we wouldn't want to give you some business and something go wrong, and then you go bankrupt and we look bad. And as firms, what guys did was they partnered, Blaylock partnered with Bear Stearns years ago. That's kind of how they came out of the box. And these firms built, Williams, I think probably, they have considerable capital, Loop Capital in Chicago. You can't really say that now. And so then it would be, well, you don't really have the personnel that, we're just not sure you can handle our kind of business. And I was able to overcome pretty much all of that, but you still had the mindset from some people that they were taking some sort of undue risk dealing with a black firm. And, let's face it, just the last 5 or 10 years, you've seen firms blowing up all over the place for doing stupid stuff. And they're not black. The black firms, Williams Capital has probably been around, 20-something years at least, maybe going on 30. So they know something. Same thing with Loop. Loop started in the 90s, I believe.
And how many of them are how many of the other companies have blown up? Quite a few over
Quite a few.
over time.
Quite a
But
few.
look, Marlon, we are getting close to some time here, so let me go ahead and ask you a few things. Where there are some thoughts. I think Yellen came on TV and kind of gave the impression like she may have some numbers that she's seen that GDP may be negative the next quarter. Of course, we know GDP has a whole lot of calculations in there that can actually, based on inventory or based on exports and all of that, can actually skew the numbers. Your thoughts?
I think I'm not sure that we're in a recession because, look at housing.
And employment.
Look at people buying houses left and right. Look at employment, wages, all of these different things. But I will say, a little bit of slowdown would not bother me at all.
Right.
Because nobody can, I saw the other day that the median home price was well over
380.
No. 400 and
oh, is it over 400 now?
It's
okay.
You check me on it, but I'm pretty sure last week I think I saw there was over $400,000. Who can buy a house?
Yeah.
It was funny when I was listening, and just kind of go back to that that hearing. It wasn't the last one, but the one where they had the Trump supporter testifying.
Right.
And he was saying, I lost my house and I lost it. And I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, you had a house? Good for you. Because most people can't even think about having a house now.
You know what is so sad? The way the system works right now, they rather create new instruments, having people double up and owning homes, where you have now two families. There are certain cultures that it's common to have several families in a home, and that's what we're seeing now. And they're adjusting things so that that's what we get, so that they can continue to increase the prices.
If I can just chime in.
Yes.
A block down the road from me.
Yes.
Well, someone bought this house, but I've lived here for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
It is an enormous house.
Mm-hmm.
Right on the beach. I mean, it's beachfront property. Enormous, beautiful house. I think it sold a couple of months ago for somewhere around $1.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
And in the entire time, it was somebody's second home. Man, I'm talking about a 5,000 square foot house.
Mm-hmm.
90% of the time, it's empty.
Right.
Empty. And it just bothers me to see this. My next door neighbor, I see him, I don't know, a half a dozen times a year. He lives in Atlanta. He's got an enormous house. It had to cost, everything around here is $1 million something.
Right.
Except where I live. No, but I'm just saying, it's so wasteful to me. But this is what cats do. And, there are tax advantages and all this kind of stuff, I guess. I don't know.
Marlon,
but,
that is the economic system of...
That's what we got.
That's what we got. And until my posse, the group of folks that I hang with, are successful, every year, another percentage of Americans are going to be joining the poor folk.
One of my relation, like an in-law, and see, that's the other thing. So, I have a biracial family,
right?
And my in-laws are, Southerners, and they're pretty much
Trump.
Not necessarily MAGA. I'm not sure that they voted for him the second time, but it's that kind of thing. And some of them subscribe to my newsletter, right?
Right.
But having spent time with them, you hear these talking points. Like, I'm watching the news with, a brother-in-law, and he says, the government just shouldn't be picking winners and losers. And I'm like,
what does that mean?
So hang on, don't you enjoy your mortgage deduction? What do you mean? I said, well, I rent. I don't get that. So the government has picked you and not picked the renter. who's probably, heck, my rent is close to a house note.
Yes.
The government has made the decision that we're
Yes.
going to reward people who do this and not reward people who do this. That's, but see, they don't, most
But you
people,
made him think.
oh, dude,
You
he
had
said, I hadn't thought about it like that. I said, yeah.
exactly.
I said, but you should. And so,
Exactly.
is he ever going to be like a progressive and get a Green New Deal shirt? Probably not.
But
But-
the truth of the matter is, I've seen. I mean, no, he probably not, but I've seen a certain percentage that when the bulb lights up on them, the change is too damn dramatic, and they go all out. So you always have these different groups of folks. But Marlon, look, this chat that we're having here as usual, has always been great, and we always transition into very, very important topics that touch on many who are listening to me. Why don't you give me a closer so that we can get out of here?
Well, I think, we've got a couple of things that just have to be addressed. Obviously, we have to have some accountability in the government. So that's one side of the coin. And then the other side, from my point of view, is that, as you have said, Democrats have really got to get their, and I hate to say message, I think it's more like the mindset has got to change. I don't need any more talking points. I need some folks doing some stuff. And I'm not saying they haven't done anything. The House has done a lot. The Senate, not so much. So we got to fix that. And I think we got the opportunity to address it here in a few months. So I just hope we do.
Marlon Weems, the Journeyman. Check out Marlon Weems' Substack, The Journeyman. It's The Journeyman is a Substack. And he's also on Medium.
I'm on Medium too, but I prefer my
your Substack.
thejourneyman.substack.com.
And guys, it's going to be right here in the blog post. Please go ahead and subscribe to this man. This man knows what he's talking about. My name is Egberto Willies. Marlon Weems, thank you so kindly for having been here with us.
My pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed, Marlon. Please, folks, don't forget that go to politicsdoneright.com/support and support our program. We guarantee you that we are going to do the work necessary so that we can really take back our country. politicsdoneright.com/support. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out. We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number one, subscribe to our channel. And number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.